Hey there, and welcome to a deep dive on cooking oils and heart health. This all started with a question about palm oil hiding out in instant noodles. And it got me thinking, with so many oils out there, like from avocado to grapeseed, how do we actually know which ones are good for us, heart healthy?
Mhm.
So get ready to dive in as we explore the world of cooking oils, separating the good from the bad and all the myths. And joining me today is an expert who's going to help us figure this whole thing out. Are you ready to get our hands a little oily?
Absolutely.
Mm.
It's pretty amazing how much confusing information is out there about cooking oil, so let's clear some of that up.
Let's do it. You had sent in a question about palm oil, which seems to be everywhere these days, but it also gets a bad rap. So, what's the deal with palm oil?
Well, palm oil is definitely a hot topic, and for good reason.
Hmm.
It's high in saturated fat, which, as you probably already know, can raise your LDL cholesterol if you're not too careful about how much you eat. But it's not really as simple as just saying, oh, it's good or it's bad.
Okay, so there's more to it than meets the eye.
Exactly. Palm oil also has some antioxidants like vitamin E, which are good for you. It's really all about balance and moderation. Instead of avoiding palm oil completely, I think the key is to be mindful of how much you're eating, especially since it's often found in processed foods.
So it's all about making informed choices. Speaking of which, what about alternatives? Like, what about oils that are actually considered heart healthy? You mentioned mustard oil and rice bran oil. What makes those stand out?
Well, they're both really interesting, especially considering their cultural significance.
Oh.
Mustard oil, for instance, is really popular in South Asian cooking, and it's full of monounsaturated fats and omega-3 fatty acids. These are the good guys that can help lower your that bad LDL cholesterol and may even lower your risk of heart disease.
Wow, that's impressive. I've actually even seen some studies linking mustard oil to better cholesterol levels. So it's not just hype, there's some real science behind it.
Exactly. And then there's rice bran oil, another nutritional powerhouse, you could say. Not only does it have a good balance of fats, but it also has vitamin E, antioxidants, and even contains this unique compound called oryzanol.
Oryzanol, that's a new one for me. What is that?
Well, studies have shown that oryzanol can actually lower cholesterol levels, maybe even better than some other oils. So that makes rice bran oil a really good choice for maintaining healthy cholesterol and a healthy heart overall.
So both mustard oil and rice bran oil have all these amazing heart healthy benefits and they're often more affordable than some other oils on the market. That's what I call a win-win. But I have to admit, sometimes those oil labels can be so confusing. It's like they're speaking another language. What should we actually be looking for to make sure we're getting the good stuff?
Yeah, you're right. Those labels can definitely be tricky. One term to watch for is physically refined.
I've definitely seen that on labels, but never really understood what it actually means.
So basically, physically refined oils are processed in a more gentle way, often using methods like filtration and steam distillation. This helps to get rid of any impurities, but it keeps more of the natural nutrients and flavor intact.
So it's kind of like choosing less processed foods, which are usually the healthier option, right?
Exactly. It's a good sign that you're getting an oil that's closer to how it naturally exists, which is always a good thing.
Perfect. Okay, that's definitely going on my mental checklist for my next grocery shopping trip. Now, we've been talking about the all-stars of the oil world, but we should probably address one that has a bit of a mixed reputation. Soybean oil, it seems like it's in everything, but there's also been some talk about potential downsides. So, what are your thoughts on soybean oil?
Soybean oil is a tricky one, for sure. It's often marketed as being heart healthy because it's low in saturated fat, which is true. However, it's also pretty high in omega-6 fatty acids.
And this is where things get interesting, right?
Yeah, omega-6 fatty acids are actually essential for our bodies. The problem is that most people get way more omega-6s than they need in their diets, especially compared to omega-3s.
So, like with a lot of things in life, it all comes back to balance.
Exactly. That balance between omega-6s and omega-3s is super important for managing inflammation in the body, which we know is linked to heart health.
So we're not saying to avoid soybean oil completely, but just be mindful of how much we're using and make sure we're getting enough of those other healthy fats to balance things out.
Exactly. Think of it this way, like you wouldn't just eat one type of vegetable every day, right? You'd want to eat a variety of veggies to get all the different nutrients your body needs. It's the same idea with healthy fats. And speaking of fats, there's one more oil we should probably talk about. Argemone oil?
Argemone oil, that one's new to me.
And that's probably a good thing. Argemone oil is actually really toxic, and it's been linked to some pretty serious health problems. It's actually illegal to sell for eating in some countries.
Wow, that's kind of scary. What makes it so dangerous?
It has this toxic compound in it They can cause something called epidemic dropsy, which affects your heart and your circulatory system.
Okay, that's definitely one to avoid. But how can our listeners be sure they're not accidentally buying or using it?
That's a really good question. I would say always buy your oils from somewhere you trust and make sure you always read the label carefully. If something seems off or the label isn't clear, it's always best to be safe than sorry.
That's good advice for sure. Now, shifting gears a bit, let's talk about olive oil for a minute. It's pretty much synonymous with the Mediterranean diet, which is always being praised for its heart health benefits. What is it about olive oil that makes it so good for you?
Olive oil, especially extra virgin olive oil, is packed with monounsaturated fats, which, as we talked about before, can lower that LDL, the bad cholesterol. It may even raise your HDL, the good cholesterol.
Right, it's like a double whammy for better cholesterol.
Exactly. Plus, olive oil is also full of antioxidants, which help protect your cells from damage. And let's not forget about its anti-inflammatory properties, which are super important for a healthy heart.
Sounds like olive oil really lives up to the hype. I've heard some stuff about olive oil fraud, though. Is that something our listeners need to be worried about?
Unfortunately, yeah, olive oil fraud is a real thing. Since high-quality olive oil is usually more expensive, there have been problems with it being mixed with other oils or mislabeled.
So how can people make sure they're getting the real deal?
I would say look for olive oil that has a certification from a trusted organization, like the California Olive Oil Council or the European Union's Protected Designation of Origin. These certifications basically mean that the oil meets certain standards of quality.
So it's like a seal of approval.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to use your senses. Good quality extra virgin olive oil should have a bright green color, a fresh and fruity smell, and a slightly peppery or bitter taste. If it tastes bland or smells a bit off, you might want to avoid it.
Great advice. We've covered a ton of different oils today, everything from the controversial ones to the classics. But is there actually an ideal amount of oil we should be aiming for each day?
Honestly, there's no magic number, unfortunately.
Uh,
The right amount of oil for you really depends on your own needs, like how old you are, how active you are, your overall health, and what you normally eat.
so like with most things related to health, it's not a one-size-fits-all kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. However, in general, most health organizations recommend about 2-3 tablespoons of healthy fats every day as part of a balanced diet of around 2,000 calories.
And that includes all sources of healthy fats, right? Not just cooking oils.
That's right. Things like nuts, seeds, avocados, fatty fish, they all add up to your daily intake of those good fats.
Okay, good to know. Before we wrap up, we've mentioned omega-3s and omega-6s quite a bit today, and I know they're essential, but what are they exactly, and why are they so important?
So essential fatty acids are called essential because our bodies can't make them. We have to get them from our diet. Both omega-3s and omega-6s are polyunsaturated fats, which basically means they're a type of fat that's liquid at room temperature, and they're involved in tons of different functions in the body.
Like what? Give us some examples.
Well, they're important for things like how our brains work, keeping our hearts healthy, regulating inflammation, even our mood can be affected by them. They do a lot.
Wow, they really live up to their name. But you mentioned it's important to keep them balanced.
Exactly. We need both types of fatty acids, but unfortunately, a typical diet these days is often way higher in omega-6s than omega-3s.
And that's where the trouble starts, right?
You got it. That imbalance can actually lead to more inflammation in the body, which we already talked about as being linked to things like heart disease.
So how can we make sure we're getting enough omega-3s, the good guys, without overdoing it on the omega-6s?
If you want to boost your omega-3s, fatty fish like salmon, mackerel, sardines, tuna, those are all great choices. And there's some plant-based options too, like flax seeds, chia seeds, and walnuts. As for omega-6s, most people are already getting plenty of those in their diet from common vegetable oils like corn oil, soybean oil, and sunflower oil.
So it's not about cutting out omega-6s completely. It's more about being aware of the oils we're using and balancing them out with those good omega-3s.
That's the key. It's all about finding what works for you to be as healthy as possible.
I love that. I'm feeling super inspired now to get creative in the kitchen and experiment with all these heart-healthy oils we've talked about.
It's great.
This has been so informative, and I bet our listener is feeling way more confident about choosing healthy oils now. But before we say goodbye, let's take a quick break and then come back for one last segment where we'll summarize everything and leave our listener with some actionable takeaways. Don't go anywhere. And we're back, ready to wrap up our deep dive into the world of cooking oils. We've covered a lot of ground, from the myths to the must-haves, but now let's talk about actually using these oils in our kitchens. Like, I'm definitely feeling inspired to ditch my usual oil routine and get a little more adventurous. Are you feeling that way too?
For sure. I always tell people, it's like, you wouldn't wear the same outfit every single day, right?
Yeah.
So why use the same oil for every meal?
I love that analogy. Okay, so how can we add some variety to our cooking without getting overwhelmed?
One way I like to think about it is matching oils to different kinds of cuisines or cooking styles.
Oh, I like that.
Like that extra virgin olive oil we talked about. It's
Yeah.
perfect for like Mediterranean dishes, salads, or even just drizzled over some pasta.
And I'm thinking about sesame oil. With that kind of nutty flavor, it just adds so much to stir fries and noodle dishes.
Exactly. It's like you're transporting your taste buds to a different country with just a drizzle of oil. And let's not forget about avocado oil. It has a really mild, almost buttery flavor that goes with almost anything. It's awesome for baking. It's great for sautéing veggies. You can even use it to add a little something extra to your salad dressings.
Okay, you're speaking my language now. I am definitely getting my grocery list ready for a major makeover after this. But before we all run off to the grocery store, let's recap some key things from our oil adventure. What are the most important things for our listener to remember?
Well, I really hope that after this deep dive, our listener feels a lot more confident about choosing healthy oils.
Hmm.
I mean, we really went from like palm oil and instant noodles
Yeah.
all the way to like the science behind different fats and how they affect our bodies.
It's like we have a secret decoder ring for the grocery store now. No more feeling lost in the oil aisle. That's the goal. And remember, like we talked about, it's not about being perfect or never using certain oils ever again. It's all about balance, finding what works for you, enjoying different healthy fats, and most importantly, just loving the process of like nourishing your body with good food.
That is such a great way to put it. Moderation, variety, and a little bit of culinary curiosity, that's the recipe for success when it comes to healthy fats. Now, we want to hear from you. How do you like to use healthy oils in your own cooking? Share your best tips, recipes, those amazing culinary adventures you've been on. Let us know on social media. We love hearing from you. Until next time, happy cooking, everyone.